we had a terrific conversation today with Lisa Frelinghuysen, who is one of the 3 co-founders of the ClutchKit, which is a unique approach to helping folks prevent unplanned pregnancies. And what I found so interesting is it's obviously, it's hard to have these conversations without getting political. We have really tried and do try to stay away from that and really talk about the care and the access. So where she comes from is whether we agree on, reproductive choice, as it relates to termination or anything else, could we potentially, at least some of us agree on letting young people or any people decide when it is they want to start a family. And she described 3 circumstances in which you might need the morning after pill, which I'd love you to reinforce what that actually means. Didn't use birth control failed, or, someone was the victim of assault. So talk a little bit about the morning after pill, what it is, and, why that's an option as far as you recommend from a medical perspective.
Yeah, so I think it's so important to understand that the morning after pill is not synonymous with what's called an abortifacient, a medication or procedure that ends an existing pregnancy. The morning after pill is a preventative measure that usually delays ovulation and therefore prevents pregnancy from occurring in the first place. So I think that's an important caveat to get out of the way. What I loved is that this is something that she really feels so passionate about, just as a way to unite groups of people who have different thoughts on the issue. And that was very important for me to hear. Number 2, I love her background, where she clerked at a Supreme Court level for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and how she has carried that legacy through to this company. So I was thrilled to talk to her, and I'm really impressed that her company has overcome a lot of the social barriers that we would typically see in this field. So let's talk to Lisa. Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun Scherl. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We're so delighted to welcome our guest today, Lisa Beattie Frelinghuysen, who is one of the co-founders of ClutchKit, which we're going to learn about. And during her day job, she is a senior advisor at Banyan Global. So welcome, Lisa. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
One of the exciting things about your company, besides the work that you're doing, is that you've brought together, beside yourself, 3 total powerhouse women who have been successful in totally unrelated careers to each other and to the mission of ClutchKit. So tell us a little bit about the founders and how you came together to create this business.
Would love to. There are 3 of us. One founder's name is Dune Thorne, and she's a powerhouse in finance. She also has been an investor in, companies that are solving women's issues. And she created Invest in Girls. And then we have a second co-founder named Christine Currents, who is part owner and CEO of Badgley Mishka, a terrific fashion brand, as well as 133 Social, which is a new emerging younger fashion brand. And then there's myself. I have a legal background. As you know, I was after Stanford Law School, I was a clerk, both on the DC circuit, but then the United States Supreme Court for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. who had been my hero. I was lucky enough that year, you never know what you're going to get when you clerk on the Supreme Court, but to be part of the court's really last landmark gender equality decision. I worked very closely with a justice on that case. We became quite close. And then I had a background in gender equality. I'd worked at the ACLU Women's Rights Project, and then after clerking, I had always been super devoted to reproductive rights, and so I served on the board of Planned Parenthood for several years, and on their executive committee. But what's interesting about the three of us is we bring such different perspectives and different skills. So, Dune just sort of honed in on how do we make this work financially. She really got this going. She sort of knows how to shepherd a little entrepreneurial business. Christine provided tremendous insights in terms of how we manufacture things. I had no idea. How do we market, e-commerce, distribution, logistics, none of which I know a thing about. And then I was able to bring some of the thinking and the theories around this issue, the meaning, if you will. I wrote about the issue. And so the three of us got together one weekend in Long Island and created this.
So tell us what this is. This is the amazing collection of brains and experiences. And I always joke, Alyssa would need a business card that's as big as a poster for all the jobs that she has. And same with the three of you. You came together to create ClutchKit. What is it? What was the rationale? And help us understand how you were able to join forces on this.
Okay. So ClutchKit, very, very simply, is a kit that contains the tools for the prevention of unwanted, unintended pregnancies. We are laser focused on the prevention of unintended and unwanted pregnancies. It turns out in our country, we have the highest rate of unintended pregnancies of any industrialized nation, and almost half of our pregnancies are unintended and unwanted. So, solving this issue is an important one. I come at it, as I mentioned, from that gender equality lens. I think that, women will never be equal in our society without the ability to decide whether and when to have children. So we came together and really focused the project on that one job, the prevention of unintended, unwanted pregnancies. The way that we got there is sort of an interesting story. And I guess I should just mention what's included in the ClutchKit. In the ClutchKit are three products. One is a tin of condoms. Another one is the morning after pill. And the third one is a pregnancy test. A lot of people my age don't actually know what the morning after pill is, and they don't understand the difference between the morning after pill and abortion medication. So abortion medication terminates an existing pregnancy. The morning after pill prevents a pregnancy, and it does so, I don't have to tell you this, but it does so by preventing or delaying ovulation. So there's never a fertilized egg, there's never a pregnancy. And the morning after pill, because it prevents an unwanted pregnancy, is legal in all 50 states, and it's over the counter in all 50 states. So this is a kit that contains those three tools, and again, really focused on an area that we thought everybody could agree on. Both the pro-choice and pro-life folks could agree that the prevention of unwanted pregnancies is a good thing. The way that it started, the Supreme Court had overturned Roe v. Wade and Casey in a decision called Dobbs a few years ago. When that decision was handed down at the end of June of that year, I gave a talk in Long Island about the decision, just explaining the reasoning, explaining not to be political at all, but women across the country, I think, felt that the rug had been ripped out from underneath them, that their rights were suddenly being taken away. And so some folks asked me to do a talk about that decision, the court's rationale, the majority opinion, the concurring opinions, the dissenting opinion, and what it meant for the country, which I did. And Dune Thorne, my co-founder, missed the talk and asked if there's any chance she could get the Cliff Notes, if we could take a quick walk the next day. We did. So we took a not so quick walk the next day, and I talked with her about the decision and the fact that it really wasn't a surprise of a decision if you were paying attention to this court, and the way that they were headed. And she turned to me toward the end of our discussion and said, what do we do now? This just seems like a dreadful decision. And I'm sure she was asking about litigation strategy. But I said, well, I always had this idea in the back of my head about providing young women and men across the country the tools that they need to live their life and live their dreams. And it goes back to a dinner that I had. I know this is a bit long-winded, so I hope you'll forgive me. It goes back
All
to
good.
that I had the night of Trump's inauguration. If you remember, the next day there was a women's rights march. And I had brought my family down to Washington, D.C. for the Women's Rights March. I felt it would be sort of a historic march and we should all be there. And the night before the march, I invited my old boss, Justice Ginsburg, and Gloria Steinem, the two 80-year-old matriarchs of the women's rights movement, to dinner that night. It was a super special dinner for me, to be honest. Really fun to see them together. And Gloria brought a number of women who were speaking at the Women's Rights March the next day. And I sat next to one of them. And it was actually this young woman who said, you know, maybe we just take this health issue away from the politicians and give every woman out there a kit that has all the tools they need to live their dreams. And in the kit, we threw everything in the kit. We had period products, we had, you know, UTI, STD, I mean, you name it. The kit was getting sort of bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the evening. And we were having so much fun talking about it. Fast forward back to that day that I was walking on the beach with Dune, and I said, I wanna make a kit that gives women the tools to live their dreams. And she turned to me and said, let's do it. The time is now. And it was really Dune that got this off the ground. You know, she immediately recruited Christine that weekend. And we started talking and brainstorming about what would eventually become ClutchKit.
I think this is so genius. I mean, when I read about ClutchKit, of course, I'm a car head, so I started reading about clutch kits for cars, then realized there is another ClutchKit, and literally said to myself, oh my God, how come somebody didn't think of this combination of products earlier? Because after all, in gynecologic practice, this would be a standard recommendation to pull off the shelves in 3 separate places. So kudos to you guys for really coming up with this. My question for you is, what is the demographic that you're really aiming to address with this? Because I would venture to guess that it could be so broad and that there may be a little segment of the population, the perimenopausal woman, who might not realize how valuable this would be for them. So who do you really market to now, and have you given that population any consideration?
It's a great question. We are currently marketing, interestingly, to parents of kids who are going to college. We did a focus group before we started this, kids in high school, kids in college, and kids after college. I call them kids, but they're young women and men. And it was interesting that the folks that were really interested in getting this ClutchKit were the high school students. You know, they have limited access to these products. They're harder for them to get. And there's a lot of stigma around them. College kids were also super interested because they love the idea of having these kits in their dorm room when they needed them. And then, you know, the folks after college thought that it was a great idea, but I think had more ability to get some of these tools. So we have really been marketing in this first launch to the parents of young adults, saying, gift this kit to your young adult who's going off to school. Tell them, you know, have a conversation with them where you tell them how proud you are of how hard they worked and you want them to achieve their dreams. And here's a toolkit in case they need it. We are now shifting our focus a bit from B2C to B to bulk C. And we would like to reach colleges. You know, my dream is to have colleges during orientation say, here's your reading list and here's your ClutchKit. Good luck. You know, we're going to be shifting our focus to colleges, to campus bookstores, to sororities and fraternities. The idea being to provide this kit to young people to help them get through school and achieve their dreams. There's absolutely nothing preventing people from, you know, people all different ages and along the gender spectrum from buying this kit. I just wanted to say that has been our primary focus in the beginning as we launch it.
So I make the point because of the perimenopausal women, so those years before menopause hits, where contraceptive needs are still there.
Right.
And many of these people find themselves suddenly single and actually would benefit from this type of kit. So just food for thought. My bigger question surrounds education, because the way you explained the morning after pill and its mechanism of action is so important, especially in my completely non-political medical mind, because women are women and the people that I take care of just need medical care and good medical care. So what do you do to educate your consumers regarding not only that point, but just general sexual health education?
It's a great question. Again, you know, part of our mission here, and I should say, just in response to your question, we want all young women and young men to have this kit, or childbearing age, I should say, to have this kit across the country. But I'm particularly interested in young women in red states with limited means and limited options having this kit. You know, the sort of dark side of what we saw last year in 2023, there were approximately 63 pregnancies brought to term from rape or incest. And I think to myself, if those young women had had the ClutchKit, preventing a pregnancy, you know, brought about by rape or incest, that would be a good thing. But the morning after pill and education. So a big part of our mission here is to educate people of all different ages about the morning after pill. You know, as we just discussed, a lot of people don't know what the morning after pill is or how it works, and that it in fact prevents a pregnancy. So we've included information in the kit, a little packet of information. We have information on our website, and we are hoping to raise some money to focus on that education. You know, one of the things that your podcast does such a good job doing is sort of lifting the stigma. And there's a lot of stigma around these products. It is, you know, the lack of education. Actually, I just read a statistic recently in terms of comprehensive sex education versus bills restricting sex education. And in the last 2 years, in 2023 and 2024, first half, the number of bills introduced in state legislatures restricting sex education has dwarfed those bills around comprehensive sex education.
And
So-
we already know that we teach abstinence in way more states than we teach consent,
Yes.
which, given the increasing rates of assault and all these other things, are big points of concern. I'm particularly struck, again, as Alyssa said, about making sure people understand the language in this space to have a conversation. This is not about pro-life, pro-choice. This is about determining when and if and under what circumstances you want to start, as they say in the space, family building. And I think that is so important. One of the themes that we see in women's health, and Alyssa sees it in her office, and I'm sure you see it from a legislative viewpoint and also in the context of this business, is women's health involves every aspect of her life and her body. It involves her brain, it involves her skeleton, it involves her social health, it involves her mental health, and it also involves her financial health. And what's so interesting to me about ClutchKit is there really is a financial component. And by that, I mean, you get to decide when you want to bring a child into the world if you're in an economic situation where you can manage that, whether, the cost of care is something that you can do. And I hate to take the romance out of starting a family, but there are so many factors that women need to think about. And, partially through COVID, partially through people like ClutchKit and Dr. Dweck, and hopefully in some small way, the podcast, we're trying to make it clear that women's health is so many layers.
Yes.
It's so many aspects of her life. It is not just one thing.
Yes.
And, you had said something when we first met, and because the world of women's health is so small, I met Lisa's partner, Dune, on the phone through a mutual acquaintance. And 2 days later, it happened that right in my same backyard, they were having an event introducing people to ClutchKit. So it was, and then we had lunch, and it was a whole, just like women's health, and just like Alyssa, I love to do things like all in immediately. One of the things that struck me is how you talked about in that first introduction, what you learned from Justice Ginsburg about bringing people along with the change. I'd love you to talk about that, because I think it's so fundamental to your philosophy as an individual and also in your professional life and what you're doing with ClutchKit.
No, thank you for that. Yes, I mean, you can tell from my background where I stand on the issue of reproductive rights. But my time on the United States Supreme Court really taught me to respect people who have profoundly different views than I do about the Constitution, what it means for our country, how to interpret it. They cared just as much as I did about all of that. As you know, Justice Ginsburg's best friend was Justice Scalia. And, they could not have been more opposite in terms of their approach to the Constitution. Justice Ginsburg used to say, fight for the things you believe in, but do it in a way that brings others along. And I felt really strongly that I wanted to do this in a way that both the pro-choice and pro-life communities could get behind. That is, we made a very conscious decision not to have products that were offensive to some people. We don't have abortion medication in this kit. We just have the morning after pill, which is preventative, as we've discussed. And so
I want to just bring one thing into this. Yeah. I'm so sorry to interrupt, just because I know people will listen to this and take it, very much at face value. Yeah. The morning after pill is not birth control. That's something else that's very, very important, because the more you take it, the more likely you are to have an unintended pregnancy. So that's just something super important. Second, the type of morning after pill that's in ClutchKit is unique. It's over the counter. It doesn't require a prescription. It does not contain estrogen, so it is safe for the masses. It is not the more intrusive, but also very effective form of postcoital contraception like an IUD. So just wanted to make those points super clear for our listeners.
Thank you.
And I did want to follow up on that for 1 second, Alyssa,
Yes.
when you say it's not birth control. As I understand, the morning after pill is indicated for use, less than a handful of times a year. So could you talk a little bit about that and what risks, if any, there are of overusing?
There's no real medical risk. I mean, it's a perfectly safe medication to even be taken multiple times, but just by pure reason of statistics, the more often you use the morning after pill to prevent an unintended pregnancy, the statistics show that the failure rate goes up every time you take it, just by virtue of the numbers. So that's what I mean by it's not considered birth control. Standard birth control measures, whether it's condoms or birth control pills or an IUD or, even rhythm or natural family planning, when done properly, will have a much more effective rate of preventing pregnancy than using the morning after pill multiple times. That's simply what I meant, but I just wanted to make that super clear.
Yeah, and I might just say, one of the reasons we called it the ClutchKit is because of that expression in the generation below me, which is that's so clutch, or in a clutch moment, you have the tools you need. And we are hoping, and our information also underscores this, that, women will take this if they had unprotected sex meaning they failed to use contraception, their contraception broke, or they were raped, that they will take this in that circumstance, but not, as you suggest, in any sort of regular or often way. It is meant to be sort of an emergency situation.
So here's today's hot flash. Per the CDC, the unintended pregnancy rates have declined from 2010 to 2019 by 15%, but there's still work to be done.
But I think what you said about those three options, failed to use birth control failed, or in the case of unwanted activity, what I think is amazing about that is, regardless of why, it's not about judgment. It's about figuring out for yourself what the next step should be.
Great question. And Rachel, you may remember, a friend of ours in Long Island, her company owns a big stake in Plan B, which is the dominant morning after pill brand. And she said to me one day and she was a big supporter of this project. She said to me one day, what the most often purchased item is along with a morning after pill? And I said, no. I made a few guesses, and she said, it's actually a bottle of water, because women are taking this pill in the parking lot, because the timing, that window, it's more effective the sooner it's taken. And that window closes quickly, especially if you're a young person and you face some accessibility barriers. It's hard to get to a drugstore. You might be nervous about seeing your parents or your parents' friends. You might not like having to ask the pharmacist to unlock something or take it from behind the counter. It's expensive. There are a number of accessibility barriers. So when you do finally get it, timing may be short. And that's part of the reason that we thought, gosh, it would be just great for young people to have this cute little kit in their dorm room, in their bedroom, when they need it in an emergency sort of way.
What's the cost? Obviously my thought was, well, does it cost the same or less than buying all three of these things separately? Talk about that.
it costs less than buying all three things separately, which we're very proud of. The dominant brand, Plan B, costs between $49 and $59 a pill. Our kit costs $60. And it does include a cute little tin of condoms and the pregnancy test too, just to make sure afterward. Plus you get this nice little bag, which you might use as a dop kit or makeup bag. So we think the price is good. We have baked into that price, Alyssa, the ability to donate kits. So we have a margin that allows us to donate kits to young women in need. And we have partnered with organizations that are predominantly women's organizations based in poverty to distribute those kits that we have, that we've been able to donate. We're very proud of that effort. It's been part of the mission from day one to make sure we can donate kits. And we've also just recently set up, we wanted to set up, we're a Corp B, a mission-driven for-profit corporation, but we are setting up a foundation, and we've recently set up a fiscal agent to take donations to distribute kits to those in need, or if somebody wants to make a donation, for example, to distribute kits to their alma mater, to their school, they can do so through that avenue and get the tax deduction in making the contribution.
Fabulous. I am guessing there is plenty on the three of your minds regarding future pipeline items. I mean, sky's the limit when it comes to the needs and wants of people who are interested in bettering and optimizing their reproductive health. Any thoughts of talking about that, or is it lip sealed at this point? I just think about at-home testing for STIs, or at-home testing that might be included in your kit regarding some other super common but almost taboo subject that could really better your your reach.
Okay, so that's so you're getting back to that initial conversation that I had with with that young wonderful actress, where we had a lot of products in there. We do talk about that, and we did talk a lot about some other products that we'd like to have in there. We talked about a subscription model. We talked about a different kit for boys. We've talked about we have not settled on what might be in the kit in future iterations of it. For now, we think that there's a tremendous benefit to really focusing on simply the prevention of unwanted, unintended pregnancies. And I'll just mention around that subject, we were talking before about finding the common ground. I think we've all been living in this country and various places around the world in a very polarized world now, where people are becoming further and further apart in their views, and more adamant in their views. And there's something that is so refreshing about finding that middle ground and agreeing on something in one of the most polarizing issues in our country. And I bring this up only to say, this is something I want to spend some more time on. I recently met with some clients of mine who are from the Midwest and who are quite conservative. They are right down the line on most issues, and they are certainly pro-life. They go to all of the pro-life fundraisers in their state. And I asked them what they thought about this ClutchKit, because I was very curious about their reaction. And I was nervous too, because I thought that it was the middle ground, but I wasn't sure. And they said, Lisa, we love this idea, because, and they showed me picture after picture of their children's, they have 4 children, their 4 children's friends who had gotten pregnant in college and dropped out and raised their kids, got pregnant in high school and had to drop out and live with their parents, raising their young children. So for them, the morning after pill is the only tool. And they loved the idea of making sure that everybody in their state had this kit, had these tools, so that they could live their dreams and have children when they are ready to do so. I should mention, by the way, I have 4 kids of my own. I love mothering. You know, my kids at this point are older, so they're definitely a little more of a speak to the hand approach. But you know, mothering, parenting has been a great joy in my life. But I was so thankful that I was able to do so when I was ready to do so. You know, when I was ready to do so, both financially and just mentally, you know, that I was ready to become a mother. That to me was so important, and I feel eternally grateful for that.
So for people who are interested, want to learn more, want to get their hands on a ClutchKit, any and all of the above, where are you? Is it currently available? Where can they get it? Where can they tell their friends to get it? That would be terrific for people who are interested.
Well, thank you for that lovely softball question.
We try.
You know, actually, I did not realize, as you did, Alyssa, about the ClutchKit, the fact that this is primarily car ClutchKits, and so I didn't know that when I called it the ClutchKit. But if you go to our website, theclutchkit.com, you will find us there. You can order kits, you can donate kits, you can learn more about us there. We are also on Instagram. Gosh, I think it's called ClutchKit_. And so we are doing some, you know, we're trying to sort of talk about and publicize our effort in a variety of ways, having young people talk about it, talking about myths versus facts, and also trying to keep it a little bit fun. I'm not in charge of the Instagram, which is a good thing. But you can certainly buy kits, and we would be grateful if you did so.
Well, thank you so much for the work you're doing and the really incredibly thoughtful approach which you're taking. I really love listening to how you speak. I can hear your thought process. You know, it's very thoughtful, it's very deliberate, and it's meant to be collaborative as opposed to divisive. So I think in these times, that's particularly important.
Thank you so much.
Thank both of you. That was a really fun discussion, and thank you for giving me the chance to talk a little bit about a passion of mine.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.